Okay, welcome back. It is 8/9 of 2015. We've already taken a look at this lesson on the continuum, on chart number 4 of the continuum, but what we discovered then was the fact that Brentano centered his discussion on the Dokounta-Threshold, and we need to examine the Dokounta-Threshold again and couple it with understanding Aristotle's take, because it is so central to Brentano's position. And the Dokounta-Threshold is the realm of spirit. And so we're just going to center in on the two central blocks of the chart, the Dokounta-Threshold for Brentano and the Dokounta-Threshold for Aristotle. And the first thing we must remember is that Aristotle's Dokounta-Threshold was the dialogue threshold of Dokeo, positing, or where we would take our generalization model and posit it as a supposed truth, not a ratified truth, but a supposed truth, our particular supposition, or a Dokeo. A Dokeo is a supposition. It's not a certainty, but at the Dokounta-Threshold of dialogue with others, we would bring our supposed generalization truth of the topoids in their proper place and posit that as a Dokeo supposition model that we wanted to raise to the level of signification through dialogue. So it would be a place where we would engage in a endoxa, agreed upon enlightenment, and adoxa, disagreements in our discussions. So it was endoxa and adoxa type of enlightenment and discussion, but it was all based on everyone's different Dokeo positing of a supposed truth of generalization. And the Dokounta-Threshold is important for Brentano. It's central to his position because it is the psychical realm. It is the realm of secondary psychical presentation when we raise topoids to signs. So it's extremely important to Brentano. And just as a review, we're going to read through Block 4 on Dokounta-Threshold Brentano. First, we posit a third-party workspace of sui generis universality, where we can gather up and progressively build a network of universal concepts. And through dialogue, we define the higher ideal properties for each topoid in its place, each generalization, and we define the topoid's spiritual magnitude as an abstract sign name. In order to do this, we take up a phonetic stance of obliquo. Now, obliquo is indirect spiritual apprehension. And if you looked earlier on the chart, down in the realm of sensation and intuition, the view is recto, or direct. But recto and obliquo, you need to think of as a recto. Think of it as looking at a book that's been opened, and on the right-hand page is your right-hand facing page, your recto page, and on the left is your previous content of the obliquo, the slanted to the left prior occurrence, prior to the page you're facing on the right. Because obliquo type perceiving always apprehends the before of that which you're considering. It always can, in a feeling type way, reappropriate the before. But in the realm of the psychical, in the realm of the Dokounta-Threshold, we're taking up the obliquo type stance and type of indirect spiritual apprehension of a secondary presentation in our reality. We do introduce the temporal continuum into the dialogue, not just spatial, and we intersubjectively acquire the relevant spiritual mark of each topoid in order to recognize its deeper significance in order to raise it to sign. And as an extension of obliquo stance, we use proteriesthesis type of logic, which is a feeling type of logic, which does take up that the prior. It does take up that which just occurred before. It can see the temporal continuum. but it's a feeling, aesthetic type of apprehension. And in that way, we identify the deeper significance of our topoids. We raise them to signs. And then we store the signs in the mechanical memory as a reusable network of signs. So instead of a lexical network of topoids in their proper place, through the Dokounta-Threshold, we raise these topoids of generalization to true signs of deeper signification. We have a brand new lexical network now of signs that are pointing to that which is beyond themselves, true significations. And so this becomes extremely important for Brentano's view, because you must raise things to topoids in their proper place, and you must raise topoids to true, deeper spiritual signification before you can ever take those signs and form a sign model that shapes reality toward the good. So the Dokounta-Threshold is essential in order to form that lexical network of signs, and in order to engage in dialogue and achieve those universal concepts that will help us to shape signs into sign model. So it's an extremely central area for Brentano. When we look at it, though, we have to kind of tie that together with Aristotle, because Brentano makes no secret of the fact that he is 100% in alignment with Aristotle. He tells that to us over and over and again in his writings, that he is of the Tübingen school in Germany, and it is a school of Aristotle. And he is deeply rooted in the theology. He calls it the theology of Aristotle rather than the philosophy, but he's deeply rooted in the theology of Aristotle. So if we go to 4b and take a look at the Dokounta-Threshold of Aristotle, we learn that Sophia wisdom penetrates the object to acquire nous mind. And for Aristotle, we always employ the syllogism as the methodology of analysis. The analytical method is always through syllogism, which means a triad approach of a thesis, antithesis, and a synthesis of the new. And the analytical work of syllogism will address the pleros's content of the signs to develop the signs through their true mature content, and the teleosis, or the eschatological trajectory of the signs, as an overall sign model. So it'll address pleros's content and teleosis eschatology. And we will inscribe an eschatological final cause over the network of classified signs. And we do this by positing that third-party workspace of universality in order to reach what Aristotle called the intersubjective substantial definitions. So there's your universal concepts that Brentano seeks. They are substantial definitions of the universal for Aristotle. And Aristotle says we do proceed from things to topoids to signs to classified signs of major categories and sign subsystems, and then to universal substantial definitions. We do all this through the Dokeo positing for Aristotle and that endoxa-adoxa dialogue. Now for Aristotle, this is a process of the self-knowing of the prime mover of the divine intellect that takes up through the first immediate truth of the divine intellect, it takes up the knowledge of mediate truth through the individuals, the self-conscious individuals participating at the Dokounta-Threshold. And this process is where aesthese, sensate presentation, is influenced by our nous poietikos. For Aristotle, psychical influence is nous poietikos, or mind-making. We have a spiritual attribute of being able to make mind, which is given at birth for Aristotle. This power of nous poietikos is given at birth. But it does allow us to apply psychical influence to sensate presentation. And when we apply psychical influence to sensate presentation, we reach Sophia wisdom, or the true understanding of nous mind. So you can see how this really, aesthese, nous poietikos, Sophia, triad is central to the entire Brentano-Dokounta-Threshold. It really is that, in a way, that Note 7 describes Brentano's Dokounta-Threshold. We have the primary presentation of aesthese, but we can apprehend a secondary presentation through nous poietikos psychical influence, according to Brentano, and that reaches nous understanding, or Sophia wisdom. And we apply that psychical influence through an obliquo type stance and method of perception. So Note 7 for the Dokounta-Threshold for Aristotle applies very directly to the methodology for Brentano and his Dokounta-Threshold. It's all about taking that recto stance of the direct perception and then through obliquo, or spiritual perception, coupled with psychical influence, we can raise generalizations to signification and signification to sign model, because it can reference universality, and that universality is Aristotle's deeper substantial definitions. So Brentano is borrowing very directly from Aristotle, and that's why we had to go back and take a look at this presentation and just focus in on 4 and 4b, just these two blocks, and really look at how Brentano directly applies Aristotle's Dokounta-Threshold to his entire position, because he really does emphasize our recto perception within the realm of aesthese, sensate presentation, but then obliquo perception in the realm of secondary presentation when we apply psychical influence of the nous poietikos, and then we can reach true signification and the universality of what Brentano called the sui generis universality, which means we have acquired true